Hello and welcome to Sales Gambit. I'm your host Ashish, CEO of Convin, a conversation intelligence platform for the sales team. In today's episode of Sales Gambit, we have Karl Becker with us. Karl has over 20 years of experience in the selling industry and runs a sales training firm of his own. He specializes in helping sales team to improve sales performance. And that's exactly why today we couldn't find a better guest than Karl to discuss how to improve your sales team's performance. Welcome to Sales Gambit, Karl. I'm super excited to host you today.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. I'm really excited to get to know you and share some thoughts.
Sure. I'd like to start the podcast with our audiences to get you know more, right? So it'd be great to hear from you. How did you get into sales and what has been your journey overall till now?
Yeah. I think there are different people out there that just love sales. And
Yeah.
I'm one of those guys. When I was a little kid, I would be the person knocking on doors, selling raffle tickets. And I even have a funny story. My sister is a little bit younger than I am, and she was a Girl Scout, and she needed to sell cookies. And so I would go door to door with her selling cookies, and we sold more cookies than any other Girl Scout troop and sent her to camp for free. So I'm just the type of guy that I just like connecting with people.
Yeah.
And I like learning about different ideas and sharing those ideas. And I think that's what selling really is. It's bringing an idea to an audience that's either thirsty or ready to hear from it, and then helping them experience that idea so that they can make a decision to move forward. So I've always done sales ever since I was a little kid. And then ultimately at where I am now, I've been an entrepreneur. I've had a lot of different companies. I've worked in the SMB for a very long time, helping leaders and salespeople just get better at understanding their strengths and their team and their offering. And so it's just been kind of this natural progression that now I find myself someone that can kind of come in and coach up and advise and support, mentor individuals and teams to be the best they can be and getting their message out and communicating with people.
That's very interesting. I love the fact that you have summarized sales into the whole concept of bringing this idea to table and then let people experience it. I don't see a lot of people following that today. It's the first time I've come across this. Very interesting. So diving deep into the topic, right? There are generally two types of companies. The company who's low at sales performance already, and their whole goal is to improve and get better at sales performance. Right? It's a very straightforward, simple case, right? You know that you have just started, the sales performance is low, and you have to improve over the period in time, and you'll do that probably, right? But then there are companies who might be doing good in a couple of quarters, and then there is a slump, and then they are the company who needs the sales performance improvement the most, right? And in this whole discussion, we'll try to focus on the second kind of companies.
Okay.
The first thing that I would love to know from you is what really hampers sales performance, or what really affects sales performance in a positive or a negative way, both combined, and then we can go ahead and do a better discussion there.
Sure. I'll give you an example. I'll tell you my answer, and I'll also give you a really quick example.
Sure.
So I think if we're at a place where the sales team isn't super clear on the value your offering provides, they lack confidence often, or they don't know exactly what they're supposed to do. And if you kind of pull back the covers and you think about that even deeper, if your clients, if your customers aren't exactly sure of the value you create, then the ability to upsell or expand the account is jeopardized too, because we're not standing at the same place looking at the same thing, right? So if we're not at the same place looking at the same destination or understanding the same outcome, then it's really hard to get alignment. And if you don't have alignment, it's hard to move anything forward. I'll give you a really quick story here. I'm working with a company where I've got 10 different account managers, and they're all software developers. They're all engineers. They come from an engineering background, but they're in charge of building out this account, their own account. So they're in charge of retention and growth of their current accounts. Well, what they do is they provide like staff augmentation, other development services, things like that. But what's happened is in some of these accounts, they came in with staff augmentation. Oh, I need a React developer. And they brought a React developer. Now they're in the account. They have 3 or 4 teammates in the account, and they see all these other problems, and they're scratching their head going, why aren't they asking us about it? Why aren't they saying, oh, can you also solve this? And as we started to learn, it was because that client that brought in the React developer initially as staff aug hasn't seen them as a different type of company. It hasn't seen that they can lead and co-create and challenge and build solutions. So where the account manager sees the company versus the client is different. So until they get to that common place of seeing
Mm-hmm.
the same thing in alignment, it's an uphill challenge to unlock that sales performance and to sell more. So I would say if you're not really clear 100% on the value you create and how you create it, that's a really great starting place, because that typically is like a friction point or a stop sign for salespeople.
Very interesting. So basically, you are saying that very in-depth product knowledge about what can the product do, what value can the product bring to the table, and how exactly it can do that, right? And also the third part can be how the customer finds it valuable, right?
Yeah,
These are the couple of things where you're saying that the salesperson should be very much in depth in to be able to improve on the performance, or that is one factor which can definitely affect the performance.
definitely. That's a part of it. Like the simple quiz I give is, if you walked into your company and you asked somebody in marketing, hey, how do we
Yeah,
create value? How are we different? What are the
yeah,
outcomes we create? And then you ask every salesperson, then you
yeah.
ask everyone on the delivery team, are you going to get the same answer? And if you don't get the same answer, then there's a lot of risk for how you sell, because it's not clear. It's not clear within your company. How's it going to be clear when we go outside and talk? So
Fair
that's
point.
usually one of the first places I start to look for a quick improvement, just getting everyone aligned.
Any other factors that you have seen in your experience which are very frequent, which sort of impacts the sales performance? Let's say a couple of them comes to my mind is obviously sales training and coaching and the kind of tech stack they might be using. It can also run down to recruiting, right? How do you recruit people in sales, right? So any other factors around that comes to your mind about when we talk about sales performance?
It does. I think it depends on how big your organization is. So if you're an organization with a handful of salespeople, I'd
Mm-hmm.
really challenge you to think about their job role. And if I were to go into your organization, you had 3 to 5 people maybe, and I looked at your job description, it's
Yeah.
probably the job description of like numerous people. What we've done is we've said, oh, this salesperson, they know how to hunt, they should know how to farm, they're going to cold call, they're going to go to networking events, they're also going to understand the CRM, and they're going to run reports, and they're going to, it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Those are multiple jobs for multiple people. And I
Mm-hmm.
think sometimes in the smaller companies, we've asked the salespeople to do too many things. So it's really hard to optimize them, to get them to do one or two things really, really well and rinse,
Mm-hmm.
repeat. And in bigger organizations, a lot of times too, things have shifted. The way we sell has shifted, or we have a new tech stack has shifted, or products change, marketing's changed, but we didn't retrain the team. So
Mm-hmm.
now again, it gets back to that alignment piece, right? The salespeople are really good at doing their job, but bad data in, bad data out is kind of the same thing. If they're not set up to be really effective, it's a burden to think that they're going to be superstars all the time until you get to a point where they're really clear on what they're doing.
Got it. And this next question can be very debatable, but I'm really curious to know your views on it. Do you think marketing efforts have any impact on sales performance?
Oh my gosh. I actually have a new book coming out in about a month called Sales and Marketing Alignment. And yes,
Great.
100%. I look at it this way. Marketing sets the table for the sales team, especially if we're talking like digital marketing. Like if they're really, interacting in the digital space, getting the brand out, using that for demand generation, using that to kind of bring people in the funnel and help cultivate it. If they're off message, or if they're not really clear on who buys, they're going to
Mhm.
bring poor leads in. And this is that kind of constant debate. Sales goes, these leads are horrible. And marketing goes, you can't close. And here we go, round and round and round. So
Yeah.
I'm a huge believer that, marketing has a ton of impact on setting the sales team up for success. A ton. Absolutely.
Interesting. So let's say, these are the couple of factors that we talked about which impacts the sales performance, right? uh, for the companies that saw a slump in the performance, how do the leaders, even or the sales leader at these companies, determine what are the signals for
Yeah.
the whole fact that now they should start working on the sales performance part, or that the team needs help? What are the signals that people should look for?
I'm going to give you two answers. The first one is like the human side of things. the
Okay.
body language, the energy, the culture. Like if you have salespeople that are starting to say things that are flippant all the time,
Mhm.
marketing sucks, these leads suck, or this is unrealistic, or they're leaving early, they're showing up to meetings late. They just
Mhm.
have a general negative vibe. And here's the thing: salespeople, by definition, are not negative people. They are optimists. They want the world to just be amazing all the time. And
Yeah.
so if you
Yeah.
have a team that they show up late, they're kind of angry, they say snarky things in the sales meeting, they're kind of teasing each other, but no one's laughing, then
Yeah.
most likely there's something really broken and it's pretty extreme. From a pragmatic or kind of analytic point of view, you're going to see these in your numbers. If you have strong KPIs, you're going to see
Mhm.
your leading indicators. Maybe you have fewer appointments. You see your close rate starting to go down. You're seeing the amount of time it takes for someone to go from one stage of the funnel or opportunity funnel to the next, your pipeline expand out. You're going to start to see these hints that something's changing, and it ultimately will show up in your revenue. And for your salespeople, it's going to show up in their paycheck, right? They're going to start to see they're making less and closing less, and they're going to get frustrated. But the leading indicators, if you can really look at KPIs and also kind of listen to the body language and the energy of your team, those are really great warning signs that we need to do something and we need to get in there and fix it.
Amazing. So, I mean, the one perspective that I'm certainly going to add after this call is not to just look into KPIs, but also look into the human aspect of it, right? And
Definitely.
how they are behaving, how their body language is, and how they have changed. It has changed their nature over the period in time, right? And if there is something that is going bad there, it's definitely a sign that something needs to be done. Great. I think that's a very good starting point. So let's say once someone determines that there is a problem and the team needs help, right? What are the solutions? How do they find out the right solution to work around it?
Yeah.
And then there is an adjacent question that I want to put up right in front. Is the solution going to be industry or segment specific,
Mm.
or the way that your specific company is structured? Does it depend on that?
Great questions. I'll address all that. So it really depends on what the problems are. But I think what I would tell you is I have seen in a lot of different sectors. Now, all B2B, I don't do much B2C consulting work. So most of this is B2B. But some of the big things that I've seen is, first of all, like, what is the culture of the sales team? So sometimes
Okay.
what I'll talk about is like, what are our values? What are our core values of the sales team? I've got one client where they really have agreed on three things. We
Mm-hmm.
always prioritize the customer. Number one, as a sales, always. Well, what does that mean? It means if we're about to head into a meeting and a client calls and there's a client emergency or they need something, I have permission from the sales manager to take care of that. Now, if I can postpone it for an hour and say I'm going into a meeting, then I should do that. But if not, I need to make sure that my number one action every day as a salesperson is to take care of our current client base. So
Okay.
that's kind of like our North Star, like client service first, client centric first. Not all organizations are going to be like that, because not all of us have long sales cycles, or not all of us have like accounts we manage. It might be a transaction, you sell it and you never talk to them again. But in their environment, they're actually a recruiting firm. So the idea that a business will hire them numerous times to help them recruit for other roles is huge, right? The lifetime value is huge. So we prioritize that. The second thing we said as a core value is we believe in actions. We believe actions create results. So what are those actions? So as a sales team, we all define what the actions were. How do we outreach? What's the cadence? What are the tools we're going to use? How do we create accountability within the organization and individually? When they all agreed to this, so when they meet with their sales manager, they're going through their KPIs. They're going through these actions to say, yeah, there's a baseline of activity I need to do every week or every month. And if I don't do that, I'm not living the core values of this team. And then the third is that we use KPIs to make decisions. And so they know that they need to create really good data in their CRM, right? They need to keep the data clean. And these are the things that they live by. So at some level, getting the team, I'm a huge believer in the human side of things and the individual and the team, and how do we support the team, but also empower the individual to go out and do great work. So to me, usually you can get a lot of success if you start to think about how you just improve the team dynamics, how you support individuals.
Okay.
Over that, I typically kind of look at where it's broken. Oftentimes I'll say, hey, what is the customer's journey from the time they talk to a salesperson. Now there's a marketing journey, right? An overall buyer's journey. But I'm talking about from the time we introduce the salesperson to that customer or to that lead. And I simply say, hey, what's the process? How are we going to move them from somebody interested to someone buying? And then if we have like a long tail or a long lifetime value, then what's that process to continue to cultivate it? And if we don't have it documented, then no one's following it. No one's measuring against it. And there's usually like it's a bucket and there's all these holes in the bucket and leads are leaking out. So I want to fix those types of things. So once we have sales process aligned, I want to make sure the tech stack holds that and we were really operationalizing sales. So I'm a big believer, like make sure the humans are cool and they're all learning and empowered and they know what they're doing, and then really support them with process and technology. And if you can do that right, you're going to, no matter what, start to get some lift in your sales organization, even if things are really bad. That's assuming your product's good.
Yeah, that's given, right? You can't do anything with the bad product in general.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what I have understood with your answer to this question was that finding the right solutions, not just about pinpointing one thing and working on one thing and say that okay, then now the sales performance will improve. It's rather a combination of multiple things that you'll have to do in order to improve the overall sales performance from your team. And it starts from the human aspect of it to the sales process to that core characteristic of what is a valuable for your sales team, what is a value that you have instilled, to the tech stack and multiple other things out there, right?
Absolutely.
And all of these combined will make a solution for improving sales performance.
Absolutely.
Is that a correct understanding?
That's how I do it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What are the most important parts that you can't miss? I see that they have multiple parts of the solution, right? For a company or for a sales leader, what are the most important things that they can't miss? If you have to point out one or two things out of these multifaceted solution.
Yeah. I think I would get to, no matter what industry you're in and whether you sell B2C or B2B, data. Salespeople really need to look at data. Let me give you an example. I have a client that sells professional services to CPAs. They have 4 salespeople and we're looking at hiring a couple more salespeople. And when I talk to the leadership team, they're all about, hey, how are we going to find more CPAs? How are we going to find more CPAs?
Yeah.
And I started to look into Salesforce, which is this tech stack they use, and they have over 10,000 customers. Well, only about 10 to 20% of them are active. So they have 8,000 people that have done business with them before that are only getting a monthly newsletter. There's no retention and growth strategy at all. So I feel like with this particular client, we're going, hey, how are we going to get all these new customers? And we're going to hire these new salespeople, and they're going to go find these new customers. And I'm going, you have a gold mine right here in Salesforce. And if we spent some time and segmented those current CPAs and put them into like different geographic areas and assigned them to different sales reps, and we created a program where marketing helped kind of support them and just kind of reactivated them, that's probably a lot faster path and more sustainable to revenue than trying to go out and find another 10,000 customers. So a lot of times what I tell sales organizations, sales leaders is, yes, I know you want to go find net new business, and that's awesome. But let's start with what we already have, because that's going to be faster and cheaper. We're going to learn more, and that's going to put us in a new environment. We're going to be in a different situation when we increase sales by 20% just from mining our own database, right? Versus having to go out and compete with all these others and bring new people in. So my number one would be, just understanding the health of your current CRM, your current database and data, and seeing if there's some quick wins in there. After that, I'd probably start with people and process.
Got it. So first look at your CRM health base, or in general your database, and see your CRM health and everything there, and then go for people and then go for process.
That's pretty darn close every time.
Sure, makes sense. If I have to, because you talked about data, right, and the database and everything, you talked about looking at the CRM properly, right? Is it possible for you to be able to point out some key performance indicators that you have found really valuable to give out that sense of what might be going wrong while someone looks at their CRM? Like, I can think of, let's say, average lifetime value, deals won against lost, right? All of that, multiple things. But can you, from your experience, tell us some KPIs that really gives that understanding very clearly?
Yeah, I'll give you a couple, and then if you want to ask me for some more, I'm happy to.
Sure.
One of the things that I think we often get disguised is if we have a sales organization with numerous people, as a sales leader, somebody might say, "Hey, what's your close rate?" You go, "My
Yeah.
close rate's 30%."
Yeah.
And that might be perfectly fine. But until you look at the close rate by individual, you might have some data disguising what's really going on. For example, I've got one client where they have a salesperson that closes close to 50% and another close to 15 or 20. But when we look at it, it's about 30. And we go, oh, everything's going fine.
Yeah.
But why are we continuing to give more opportunities to the person that only closes 15% and not the person closing 50? There's some basic math here that if you just look at some KPIs to see, who should be closing more, and then it's either train them up or get them out if you're really, driving hard for revenue, right? Unless there's some other value that they're providing. So close rate on an individual basis to me creates a lot of ahas based on that example I gave you, right? Another one, it sounds so basic, but it's about overdue tasks. And if you have rotting opportunities, more or less what you're looking for is, sorry, salespeople, but this is the truth. You're looking for the salesperson or salespeople that aren't following up, that are not doing what they said they're going to do. They're not working the process. Because if you have a clear process and you can operationalize it, then you start to course correct if it's not working. But if you have salespeople that just aren't doing the work, they're not following up, you're losing the game against yourselves. So those are kind of the first ones I start at, because they can get corrected really quickly.
Fair point. And do you also look into matrices like revenue per sales or revenue percentage of revenue from new business? Are these the indicator matrices of how well you might be performing?
Those are really good too. If you're talking about if I look at the whole KPI from beginning to end, if I start to think an integrated funnel with sales and marketing, with marketing, and I'm looking at, how many leads are being brought in, what's the cost of acquisition, what is it costing to bring someone in, where is it coming from, how good are the leads, what is the average appointments, things like that. But once I get to sales, I certainly want to look at time they're in the pipeline, close rates. If we are letting our salespeople provide discounts, is there some salespeople that are selling at a higher rate? What is the data showing us? The data might show that we just updated pricing, and all of a sudden the close rates across the board for the entire sales team dropped 10%, right? So maybe we shouldn't have increased it that high. So I'm always looking at things that kind of have a cause and effect, or if they're a leading indicator, right? Like how many net new opt-ins, how many conversions from one stage of the funnel to the next. It's about time and velocity for me. It's either about, are the people doing the work that they said they're going to do, or is the velocity of the funnel slowing down, or the effectiveness, efficacy of the funnel slowing down? And you're going to find those in a lot of the KPIs we're talking about right now.
Understood. No, I think I'm aligned to them already. Moving on to the next part of the whole sales performance plan that you said was people, right? And I am aware that you mentioned people on how to study their body language to figure out what that they might be slumping, right? There might be a slump in the morale and all of that. How do you correct it? How do you make it better?
Yeah, I get asked this question a lot. I'm going to tell you a story. So I got hired to come in as the director of sales as a fractional role in a B2B company about 3 years ago.
Okay.
And day one, I was told I need to fire this one particular person. And we'll just say their name is Bob.
Yeah.
Bob is negative. Bob asks too many questions. Bob takes too long on his appointments. Bob's making everybody depressed. We need to get rid of Bob. I said, okay, let me give me a month. Let me see what the whole team's really like.
Yeah.
So I reach out to Bob and I get to talk to Bob, and Bob starts to say, everybody hates me. Nobody wants me to be here. And I ask these questions and people tell me these are stupid questions. And Karl, if I had these questions, I could sell more effectively. And then I learned that Bob has to sell a very specific way. This organization had a very specific way of selling. And Bob goes, if I have to sell this way, I'm never going to be successful. But if I could sell this other way, I could be successful. So over the next couple weeks, I do some one-to-ones with Bob, and I just keep listening. I listen, and I keep asking questions to understand. Tell me more. Tell me more. Oh, that's curious. What do you mean? Describe it. And at the end, I said, look, Bob, if you wanted to be successful, what could I do for you? How could I empower you to be successful? Bob's like, get me the answers and let me sell my own way. And I'm telling you, it's going to be great. So I go back to the rest of the company. I say, look, I don't think we need to let go of Bob. I actually think we have a tougher problem in the organization. I'd like to give Bob 30 days to sell how he wants and see what happens. Sure enough, Bob starts to be more positive. He's happier. He feels heard. He feels trusted. He feels recognized, and he starts to close more than anyone else on the team. And this goes on for over a year, where he's selling sometimes 2 times as much as everyone else. So in this case, Bob just needed to be heard. And I think with any human being, if you're the manager, try to take preconceived notions, put them out there. Try to start with a clean canvas and just start to get to know this person as a human and really have dedicated time to learn. And it's not always going to work. Bob could have been, I could have met Bob and Bob could have just been a jerk and we would have fired Bob. But if you can invest some time and really understand what's going on in people's lives, it helps. And so one of the things I do to give you more of a tactical thing is I have something called an individual performance plan. It's in my book, Set Up to Win. I actually think it's a free resource on my website. If not, you can email me, I'll send it to you. But it's more or less this document to understand what's important to the salesperson. What are they valuing? What do they play for? Why do they go to work? What are their personal goals? What are their professional goals? And what it's really trying to do is get a blueprint of what that salesperson needs to be successful for themselves. And then as a manager, you have the opportunity to say, I can do that or I can't. But if you can, then you start to build this trust with the salesperson and they start to become better. Because no salesperson decided, I want to not sell anything today. I don't want to be successful. Like that's not what, they didn't show up to do that. It's pretty painful when it's not working. So I typically tell people start there. Now, certainly there's other things if, they're not performing well or they're a farmer in a hunter role or a hunter in a farmer role. But in general, I try to understand where the person is at this point in time and then understand what's the next path forward for the company and for them.
Basically, if I have to understand, you're saying become an emotional support system for them, make them feel heard, and then, probably just think about enabling them as far as you can do, right? As far as you can go to sort of improve the whole people aspect of it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty right. Just really seek to understand, get some common agreement, and then get them to tell you what they're going to do to be successful, and then believe them and support them and empower them and give them the tools, but also put in the guardrails. Like, hey, I'm okay to do this, Bob, but at the end of the month, if you're not closing as much as you were before, I'm not going to let you keep selling your new way. And Bob was like, no problem, watch me. And I was like, okay, here we went. And he did great.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Coming on to the process part of it, right? Because we have covered the CRM database, the people, and now the process part, right? Something that has to be improved in process becomes pretty much evident when you spend good enough time within that company or, for that process, right? You feel that, okay, this is something that has to improve, right? But the one thing that I would love to know from you is what processes have you seen that needs a lot of improvement very frequently, right? When I say very frequently, it can be 2 quarters, 3 quarters. You have to really change it, right? You can't keep doing the same way that you were doing earlier because your market has changed, the dynamics have changed, the geography might have changed, the competition might have changed, right? All of those things keep on happening, right? So there are multiple processes for sales teams, but what process do you think leaders need to keep an eye for and see if that needs iteration, that needs improvement?
That's a really great question and a difficult question. Let me just kind of talk through some answers because I don't have one ready to go. But I'll tell you an example. I have one company that I work with where we have kind of 2 parts of the sales team. We have your traditional kind of closers, the salespeople that get the appointment. They talk to the person. It's a solution sell type thing that usually is about a 4 to 6 week sales cycle. So that salesperson is really having to invest time and learn from their lead what they need and what their problems are to be able to bring the solution. Then we have a sales team before that. That's kind of the bridge from marketing to sales, which we call sales development reps or SDRs.
Pre-sales or sales development. Yeah.
Exactly. So those pre-sales, my sales development reps are really my eyes and ears. They're my leading indicator of eyes and ears in process. So
Okay.
what typically happens when I meet with them once a week is I'm looking at the basic KPIs. Are they making the calls? Are they having the conversations? Are they sending the emails? How many appointments are they generating? And if that's normalized, if it's normal, then I kind of go to the next level. Like, what are you hearing? What are you seeing? Does it feel like a different lead quality? Are people asking different questions? What's going on? Now, if the numbers are wrong, then we dive into that even sooner, because it might be something with marketing where marketing's found a new source or they've extinguished. There's no more leads at this one pool where they've been marketing, right? But what's really fascinating when I ask the sales development reps to not only give me the data of their call performance, like qualified, not qualified, when I ask them to give me the qualitative, I'll start to see trends. So what I saw probably the last 6 weeks, is a trend where people are much more concerned about spending money. So before it was, hey, I want this thing and I want my life to be better. Yes, I would take an appointment with your sales team. Now it's, I want my life to be better, but how much does this cost? And how soon will it work? Because they have a higher degree of risk in their brains of where they're going to spend their money. And if you think about the economy and the world kind of theater right now, it makes sense, right? It tracks. We had tax day, we have a war in the Ukraine, we have all these other things, inflation, concerns that we're going to go into a recession. So I think people are a little bit more anxious. So I like to use my sales development team as my eyes and ears of what might be happening, and then I validate it with data. So from a sales process point of view, that's one of the things I do. And if things were changing, like we weren't getting as many people picking up or calling, or they're not booking as many, we'd start to figure out if there's a tactic we need to change. But those are the types of things that I'm usually trying to do. It might not have answered your question completely, but that's what came to mind.
I think I've gotten the answer partially, but I have one follow-up question that might
Great.
clarify a lot. One of the process, I think what you mentioned is that you'll use sales development and you will keep a very close eye on sales development as a whole process and see if you can, derive your learnings from there and implement it across the sales team. A very important process that I have come across and have learned over the period in time that I have spent in sales is the incentive structures for the salespeople and commission payouts, right? I mean, the company always think of this in last. For the company, what matters is the business, how much revenue they are earning and all of that. But if you think from salesperson's point of view, that's something that they're working for, right? And having a great incentive structure, having a great comp plan in general really helps a lot, right? To keep the team motivated and recharged.
Absolutely.
How often do you really look at the incentive structure? How often do you try to change it or modify it? Because the competition is changing, right? Everyone has got tons of money in their bank, and all of them can give great compensation structures to your people, right?
Yeah,
How do you do that?
Yeah, I like that. First, I'll tell you one of the things I do with comp plans. I like to give the sales team kind of like 3 different levers to pull. So the first one is your typical competition. Hey, who sold the most, whether on volume or dollar amount? And it's a competition. What we're really trying to do is the people that like to compete, we're trying to get them to get excited that they can compete.
Yeah.
Then I like to create individual competitions too. Hey, if you can generate 50 appointments on your own, then I'm going to give you a $200 bonus. If you can upsell this new product to this group, then I'm going to give you another bonus. If you can sell, 10 deals by the mid-month, I'm going to give you another bonus, but it's individualized. And then what I like to do is I like to do a team-based one. And this is if you run a really great sales team where they're getting inspiration from each other, knowledge share from one another, they're getting into action, they create some accountability, then this is a great one. And it'll be like, as a team, if we hit this milestone this month, you will all get money. So even if you're the lowest performer, but you sold one more deal and that got us over the hump, everybody wins. So that's not what you're talking about, but I do like that structure because it gives each individual and team ways to do things. Now, from a comp plan model, yes, you have to be right now very diligent about how you're comping your salespeople and if it's enough. I had a recent conversation with a COO of a company, and he was traveling, and he went out and traveled to Arizona where his salesperson was and started to talk. And the salesperson literally said, look, the compensation you're giving me right now isn't enough. I'm getting recruited all the time. And they worked together and they literally said, if you can increase my commission from X to Y, then I'm good. So the next conversation was a phone call to me saying, what do you think about this? And I said, well, we can't do it just for this one guy. You realize that? Like if we say yes, it's going to have to be universal. So let's double check the numbers. Let's make sure there's enough margin. Have we increased our product price already? Are we keeping up with inflation? Like, because it's a candle burning at both ends right now, right?
Yeah.
So I definitely applaud that you call that up. So I would say from a sales process, looking at compensation right now on even a 90-day basis, if you're in a highly competitive space, is probably not a bad idea.
Interesting. Great. So we have talked about all the do's, right? I mean, what to do, what to improve, what to do in process, people, database, right? Everywhere. What are the don'ts?
Yeah.
What are the couple of things that stood out very upfront, clear to you that okay, don't do these things. Whatever you do, don't do these things, right?
The very, very first one is don't mistake a farmer for a hunter.
Okay.
And don't think all salespeople are created equal. So what I mean by that is, I think a lot of times as business owners or business leaders, or if maybe you're a sales manager that hasn't done this for very long, a salesperson is a salesperson. And you go, oh, they're charming, they're funny, they're smart, they're aggressive, I'm going to hire them. I would really recommend you first go, is this a role where I need someone that's more assertive? And they're like, I don't really like the word persuasion, and especially for sales, but assertive and being able to persuade somebody. Like, do you need somebody like that? Or do you need somebody more that's like almost like a customer service rep that like maintains balance and doesn't want to create conflict and like is really the client advocate? What do you need? Because if you hire the wrong person, and if you need somebody really aggressive and you get this farmer more like cultivator, they're going to fail and you're going to get frustrated. Conversely, if you need somebody that's really good at like smoothing things over and is trying to keep peace, and you get somebody really assertive in there, they're going to feel like they're getting sold all the time, and it's going to create like kind of a weird feeling. So I really recommend like understanding the type of person you need and then using some sort of sales assessment to just double check that you're getting the right person that fits the role that you want. Because that's where mistakes are made a lot. They think all salespeople are created equal, and it's just not. They're different flavors, different strengths, and your job as a sales manager is to make sure you get the right people on the team playing in the right positions.
Makes sense. I think this is great, right? The way that you have pointed out that not all salespeople are created equal, and you really need to understand which role suits them the best. Do you see companies hiring accordingly? But because I see companies scaling up, but I don't see them really taking this into picture and then hiring accordingly. Their goal is to really fully fill in the seats, right, that they have.
Unfortunately, yes. I think there's a lot of industries where they do think all salespeople are created equal, especially when you talk about companies that use a lot of digital to generate their demand. They see salespeople more as order takers almost. But if they have a super simple sale, then maybe that's okay. But if they have a complex sale, or even a slightly complex sale, or some sort of solution sale, or a sale where you need to touch point with people numerous times, then this becomes super critical. So it gets back to that continuum of what you need. But unfortunately, I do see this happen. And even I find it when I talk to recruiters, they're like, well, how long have you been selling? 20 years. Well, have you ever sold, whatever, right? Have you ever sold toilet paper? No. Well, could you? Yes. Okay. Well, what do you want an interview? And it's like, whoa, like back it up a little bit. So, I do think it's something that the right hire can make or break a sales organization and can make or break revenue. And I think we all know the wrong hire can be super expensive. So if anything, I would say spend a little extra time really understanding the sales culture, the sales team, and the individuals that would work well in that structure.
Fair point. No, I think that's totally right. That sort of brings us to around the end of the podcast, but I'd love to end the podcast from your reading recommendations, right? I sort of do ask this question to everyone who comes in, is because I think that sales is not just a job where you just have to execute, right? You really have to apply a lot of brain on what is going on. You have to be really self-aware. about what's going on around you with the client, with the industry, and all of that, and then figure out a best way to convince the person on the other side of the table that you have a solution to their problem, right? What are the reading recommendations that you have through which people can really improve? Anything that you like?
Yeah. I don't read a lot of books on actually the art of sales, like how to sell.
Yeah.
So most of my recommendations are going to be more about like how to be a good teammate, how to learn to team, how to manage, kind of how to understand who you are and how you fit. So one of the ones I like is The Five Dysfunctions of a Team by Lencioni. And I tell that to you if you're an owner listening, or you're the VP of sales or a sales manager. There's some really good lessons in there about building trust and building a team. And the whole book is about the journey of you're so much more powerful and so much more successful when you build a team. It's a quick read. The audiobook's about maybe 2.5 hours if you listen to it pretty quickly, and you'll kind of get some ahas. I would also tell you that I have some great stories in my book, Set Up to Win. So without it being like I'm just promoting myself, there's some really fun stories in there. For a sales manager or a salesperson, you're going to see yourself, because I do so much coaching with managers and individuals. You're going to go, oh, I know that guy, or oh my gosh, I'm that guy. And there's another book called Who Not How. And so that's really about like thinking not how you're going to solve something, but who could solve it for you. So I really like that because, again, as a sales manager, unlock the team, figure out how the team can help you. Those would be the three that I would mention. Yeah.
Understood. Great. Karl, this was great to the great conversation, right, about sales performance and everything. That brings me to the end of this podcast, and it was definitely very insightful. I'm sure the audience should love it.
Great. I really appreciate the time. This has been fun, and you've asked me some amazingly smart and relevant questions, so thank you for that.
Sure. This is your host, Ashish, signing off. See you in the next episode.